Oh my gosh, we have matching mugs.
Cool.
All right. I see everyone hopping in. Good morning. Good afternoon if you're on the East Coast.
Or somewhere around the
Happy
world.
Saturday. Oh, yes, this is true. I keep forgetting. We've got a global community here. All right. If you can hear the sound of my voice, I'd love to make sure that all the tech is working. Let me know in the chat where you're calling in from, and we can welcome you all. Just gonna get a few things set up here.
Hey, Mary. Nice to see you. Oh, see, so we got Portland, Maine, and we got Portland, Oregon. So we've got all the Portlands here.
Yes.
That's awesome.
All right, we're all systems go on my side, Jen.
Awesome, awesome. Well, welcome to our monthly Ask Us Anything. And I first want to acknowledge that if you showed up on a Saturday at any time, wherever you are in the world, kudos to you, because clearly you are serious about growing yourself and your business. So thank you for joining Sarah and I. We love doing these. At the end of 2021, we asked ourselves, how can we be of more service to people who are building their businesses, especially when it comes to team? I think most of you, I don't know if you're new to me, I'd love to know like how you found us inside of the chat, or if it's something like you've been waiting and you're like, oh, finally, I'm going to get up close and personal. This is a really great way to do that because, we have about 40 people who registered, but as you know, with anything, we'll always get about like 20% of that show up, which is normal. And that right there, that's a lesson in any of your online efforts that, people decide they're going to do something different. But the cool thing is this is being recorded. So if you're listening to the recording, hello to you too. So anyway, let me check in here. Ooh, oh, cool. Tracy, you saw me in Amplify. That's great. That was a good conference. Amazing. Okay, so let's get started. Let me tell you how the flow goes. We always pick a topic to keep our discussion structured. And the reason we think that's important is because it allows us to go deep under one idea, right? And we source those topics from either you and or our years of like patterns that we see in our clients and in the industry, and we want to bring them to you and have discussions around them. So we're going to be spending about 45 minutes together today, and hopefully even have some time for some open questions. So let's go ahead and get started. Sarah, anything else you'd like to add?
No, I think you covered it all. And hi to the replay. I always like to make a point to say hi because I'm one of those people too who get super busy and caught up, and catch replays also guilty. So hello, I see you.
I know I have to remind myself. All right. We're going to use slides too, because that's easier for us to, follow along, and you're welcome to take notes. Again, this is going to be recorded and you get the recording as well. So, don't feel stressed about it. There's no quizzes here. There's no tests. But today we're going to talk about clean decision making and handling trade-offs and hard conversations. And that's both in your company and in your life, because I believe those of us, I don't do this anymore, but there was a time when I used to separate my life and my business and think that they could coexist in these silos, but actually they can't. In fact, I say a lot that there's really no such thing as a business problem. Most business problems are personal problems that aren't being managed and not being communicated. And it bleeds and feeds into your thought process, in the way that you communicate with your team and all of that. And so that's what this month's theme is. I do want to say, since this might be your first time hanging out with us, who I am. I don't know if we don't have a slide on that, right? Because everybody kind of knows us. Okay, great. So I'm tuning into you from the San Francisco Bay Area. I live in the San Francisco Bay Area. My name's Jen Kem, and I'm the CEO of Master Brand Institute, and we help entrepreneurs get seen, heard, and paid for being themselves. And we also work with bigger companies as well. But for the purpose of this, most of you are running small businesses, I think. If you're in a different type of role, please let me know. And this is Sarah Paikai. You want to introduce yourself, Sarah?
Yes, we have a slide for that one
Oh,
with the two of us.
oh, well, there you go. But you can get
Oh,
ahead. We can skip it.
we- so I'm Sarah Paikai. I'm Jen Cam's right-hand woman and COO. Jen and I actually started out our working relationship together. I was her intern, an overqualified intern, but I was so eager to learn from Jen. I didn't know anything about sales and marketing. I'm an artist by trade. I came in from a nonprofit performing arts academy, and I was just so eager to be mentored and to learn from her and learn all the things. And together we have built an 8-figure company. I help run all the day-to-days. I work on all the consulting with our high-level 7 and 8-figure clients, and quite a handful of 5 and 6-figure business owners, small businesses, like I'm assuming the ones that are in the room and watching the replay, to help streamline their structure and systems, and even some strategic input there to really grow their business to the next level. So I love what I do. This Ask Us Anything is probably one of my most favorite things to do, because I just like to be able to share all the things that we've gleaned and learned in our 8 years of Jen and I working together.
Mm. And we are originally from Hawaii. So, Sarah lives in Vegas now. I live in the Bay Area, but Hawaii is home for both of us. So, anyway, since we asked you to share where you're living, we figured we'd share the same. All right, so let's jump in. I think the main thing, one thing you should know about our campus is that we believe in context over content. It's so easy to give you 5 steps to grow your team or 10 ways to be better at marketing, and those are important. But what's more important is what's behind that, the why and the what and the who. And we're going to talk about the why, the what, and the who today, as we jump into this conversation. So, oh, here's the slide. Yeah, we've been together
Yeah.
quite a bit and all over the world. Like, we've gotten to travel all over the world together and do live events in all kinds of places, New York, Barcelona, Santa Barbara. Gosh, I see a lot here. So, and we've gotten to work with a ton of people. So it's been really, really fun. Um, this right here this was in London. We had high
At
tea
the
at the
Ritz.
Ritz. We thought
Woo, so
we were
fun.
fancy. So that was really fun. This was at the birthday of Femfluence, which, by the way, Femfluence is turning 4 on February 25th, which also happens to be my birthday this year. And so also, if you're either in the San Francisco Bay Area or you can find your way here, every month we're hosting a Femfluence table, which is 25 women. We gather together from different industries to connect and help each other grow their lives and their business. So if you're ever in the Bay Area, you want to come to those will be also watch your emails, because we're going to be publishing the schedule for that soon. All right. So with that said, let's jump in. Okay, so let's talk about the context. So every company, by the way, when I teach you stuff, think through your own company, needs to have what we call a master use case. So a unique solution expertise that they work all of their ideas through. And on our campus, our master use case is the values-driven framework. We use this framework to make decisions. I use this framework to make all my decisions. And I think that I'm writing a book on it. I was, for those of you who kind of heard that I was writing a book, originally it was going to be about the master brand method, which is also one of our use cases, but it's not our master use case. This is kind of the framework to rule them all, the values driven framework. It is my personal philosophy of life. And then secondly, I realized that I was using it to run my business and didn't have a name for it, you know? And each one of us has something that motivates us to do what we do. And after studying, frankly, myself and a lot of the clients that we had, I realized that those that were successful were driven by their values, and those that were unsuccessful were driven by their values too, but mainly by values that were imparted upon them by other people, right? But those who are driven by their values, where they can find the way to come from their own beliefs and principles and align those beliefs and principles with their actions, are what we call successful. And when I say successful, not just financially, money's great. I've been rich and I've been poor. Rich is better. Okay. I've been both of those. Um, but I'm talking about, there was a time in my life where, I had a really great salary, a very important job, a beautiful house, a luxury car, 2 kids in private school, but I was a miserable crone of life. Like, I actually hated my life. No one really knew how badly I hated my life, but I was depressed, anxious, cranky every day. And so financially, I looked really happy or successful, but everything else in my life was not aligned. I don't know if any of you ever, like, if you see yourself in that story a little bit, but the same thing for me. And now I can say that I truly love my life. My life is not perfect, but it's aligned. That's what I like to say. It's never going to be perfect, because life is like, it's either a tsunami one day or a lazy river the next, and everything in between, right? And so that's how we move through life. But anyway, so when I realized that there were 3 things that were driving successful people, it came down to vision, voids, and violations. And so those are the 3 ingredients that make up what your true values are. Now, vision, a lot of people in business talk about vision because that's sexy. Vision is sexy. We're visionaries. We are we have these big dreams and ideas. We want to change the world. We want to make an impact. We want to make great money doing it. But what a lot of people don't talk about is what really drives vision typically are 2 things: voids and violations. And so I want you to think about vision as your future self. Okay, your future self, the person that you're working to become on the road to your vision coming true. So your vision is your future self. And if we're only thinking about our future self, we're not acknowledging what it took to get here. And so what it took to get here, our past self, is our violations. And what I mean by violations is anything that we felt was taken away, was disrupted. In some cases, unfortunately, it could be big T type of trauma, where something happened, in your past life that where somebody betrayed you or hurt you. Um, but it doesn't also have to be that. It could be that somebody told you, you can't do that. That's not something you can have. That's thinking too big, right? So a violation is a series of events or experiences in your past life that affect who you are today. Your voids are your present self. Okay. So the voids are the gaps that you feel you either are missing in your life or you feel is missing in the marketplace. So, part of why you probably want to have a company, a business, is because you want to solve a problem. And guess what? If you're not solving problems, your business won't be successful. People give money to businesses because they want to solve problems in their life, right? So problems are voids. Your customers have voids, and you're here to solve those voids. But you personally, as a visionizer, we call that role the visionizer. I don't call them visionaries. I call them visionizers because izer means action. Okay. Visionizers understand the voids that they have and they want to quickly solve them. Okay. So when you understand this framework and you build a future self vision, you understand what past things have influenced who you are and do it in a way that allows you to um, honor those things happened and that they're ingredients, necessary ingredients, even if some of them sucked to who you are. And then voids, what's currently missing What is the gap? And then what is the missing in the gap of your customers? That's the alignment that makes a business successful. And so what it also does, it helps you make what we call clean decisions. Clean decisions. I don't believe in hell yes decisions. I think actually hell yes decisions can be a little too passionate because we're also, when we're under stress or we're also like feeling sad, we make hell yes decisions. And I like to call them clean decisions. Like I think through any decision I have to make, whether it's spending money, whether it's being around certain people, whether it's this next campaign that I'm advertising coming up, is it aligned with our values? Is it driven by our values? And if it is, then it's a clean yes. If it's not, it's a clean no. There's no such thing as a clean maybe. Maybes are dirty. I like to say maybe is the devil, okay? Because maybe is what keeps us playing this infinite loop of double dutch, okay? Where like we're trying to jump in, but we're afraid of getting whipped in the ropes, you know? That's how many of you agree that saying no is actually or not getting what you want is actually, if you think about it looking back, was probably better than not doing anything at all, right? That's where maybe gets us busted. So yes, no, clean, values driven does that. Okay. So um, these are the values of our company: autonomy, justice, generosity, legacy, and world-class excellence. And our values, again, become the filter for us to make business decisions for who we would partner with, whether or not we would launch a certain program, frankly, even who our clients are. You know, we are, not to brag, but our company is the top brand and business advisory online, truly. All of the big names have been our clients. And we've become, because we are so values driven, even more and more discerning over the years. Like money is great, but our peace and our values uh, are more important. And so for us, if even our clients are not aligned with these values, it's a clean no for us, right? It doesn't mean they have to have the same values. And I want to, because as you build your value stack, I don't want you to think I'm saying everyone has to have the same values of you. No, but there needs to be an alignment between the values, right? And you can see that based on their behavior and your behavior, right? So now, with all of that context, we're going to answer some questions because today is about trade offs, clean decisions, um, having hard conversations when needed, that type of thing. Okay. So in the meantime, why don't you ask some questions? You can even ask questions about the value stack. You can put it in the chat, and then we'll get to those. But I know that we have some pre-submitted things that Sarah and I are going to start with, so we can get going. And then feel free to put it um, in the chat, okay? And you get, I always say, like, those that speak up get served, right? So this is a great place because this is an intimate virtual room where you can ask anything. So take advantage of it because this is, this is free. Like, go for it. So okay, so Sarah, you want to kick us off?
Yes. And I put the
Oh,
question.
here.
Okay,
Okay.
good. I picked the ones that I thought would serve the room the most. So the first question that I chose out of the pre-submissions, so they said, I feel like I have a new idea every day and I'm not sure what to focus on and how to prioritize it. What's worse is when there's a new fire that comes up and demands my attention. How do I know what to work on first? There was a like longer context in the beginning, but I really just called out the heart of the questions and I think they're so juicy.
Well, first of all, both of us will answer this question because I think Sarah will speak to some of the tactical things you can do to become better at that. But I'll talk about like the way of being that I embody when I'm faced with the same thing. Because I just want people to know that I have a ton of ideas. In fact, some days I wish I was just paid for my ideas because if that were true, I would actually be a billionaire. I'm sure of it. But I have what I call discipline around my ideas, and people don't like the word discipline. They think it's a negative word. I think it's a The root of the word discipline is disciple. It means a devout follower. And I think that if you're not a disciple of your own dreams, who the heck is going to be? You know what I'm saying? Like, so I revisit and reframe discipline as I'm a disciple to my dreams. I am committed and I am a devout follower of my dreams. So that's kind of like the first thing. Like, if you have a new idea, that's great. But first ask yourself, the other things that I'm working on right now, is it going to kick me out of disciple mode? Can I put it on the shelf for just a little while? Right. Or maybe this new idea actually will enhance or improve your current ideas. So that's kind of one of the ways I would make a values driven decision around whether or not to work on that. The other thing I want to say is that I'm a multi hyphenate. How many of you are multi hyphenates? Right? Multi hyphenates are people who have a lot of different interests. I mean, I have 3 companies, I have a vineyard now, I have a crystal business. By the way, if you guys like crystals, we're having a sale tomorrow on Instagram. And so, I mean, what is that? That's like 5 things that I have going on plus a family, right? And so Sarah has 4 kids that are all basically teenagers now. So for those of you who know how that goes, bless your heart. So all of that to say, if you're a multi hyphenate, and most visionizers are, um, you got to ask yourself what you really want, right? And ultimately, what's interesting is wherever you put your energy is where it's going to flow, right? So if you have a bunch of different ideas and you don't have structure to finalize those ideas, that's where you get messed up. So here's what my point is. I have 5 companies I'm running basically, right now. Every single one has a system behind it, and it's the same system. This is why I'm able to do as much as I do and still not work. When I say not work, my creative days are Mondays and Fridays. I don't take calls on those days. I'm obviously taking a call on Saturday. But like, I don't, those are days that I can be creative. And then I have really intense working days, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And all of the companies that we run have the same organizational system behind it. So that's the way you can get more done as a multi hyphenate. But you need someone who's more organized than you running that shit. Okay. Because here's what I want you to hear: you are not an organized person. Stop pretending you are. You're not organized. You need structure. You need structure and organization are 2 different things. Visionizers need structure, but we're not organized. And that's the conflict. That's the tension, right? So what we need to find is help to get organized. Now, I know you're like, okay, but who do I hire? What do I do? We'll probably get into some of that in a moment. But first, you have to acknowledge and get honest that you're not an organized person. I'm not organized, but I'm structured and I know where everything is, because us visionizers, like, we may be like, we can live in a little bit of untidiness, right? And I know where everything is. But in terms of organizing my Dropbox, my Google Drive, those types of things, I tell people all the time, let me just show you how many unread message. Oh, I have 161 unread text messages right now.
I get so much
161.
anxiety every time you show folks this. I'm just like, oh my
161 text
gosh.
messages. There are a lot of people pissed off at me right now. That's the first thing. And I mean, emails, I have Yahoo, I have 330,000 unopened. Gmail, I have 47,000 unopened. Okay. But I still have a really successful business. How? Because I don't pay attention to the shit that doesn't matter. I only pay attention to what matters. And it frees up my life. And I'd rather have that than clutter my brain. Clutter my brain with a lot of ideas. but I do have a lot of ideas. In fact, if you saw my running list of notes on my, let's look at my notes app. My notes app, I have 300 notes currently. These are all new ideas that I have. And inside each note, there's a bunch of ideas, right? So I keep my ideas somewhere, but I don't act on all of them unless it fits within the system that we have, because it's made my life better. So there's my first, there, I'm going to shut up now. Sarah will give you some more tactical advice, but that's how I run my life.
So I really like this question. +1 on everything Jen said. I'm actually the opposite. I have maybe like all of my notes have like artistic thoughts that I have, but for the business, I am not really the ideas person. I'm more the structure person and looking at what the timing is of things, when things need to be set up, what's going to give us, and it's still strategic. I think that sometimes we think organization means it's a checklist and everything is going to be static and it's a repeatable process that happens time and time again. And I see a lot of that when you talk about structure, organization out on these internet streets and their marketing. They make like everything can be boiled down to a one size fits all repeatable rubber stamp. And that's just not how businesses work. Jen and I always talk about how this values driven business is really an ecosystem. It's a living, breathing ecosystem that takes care of the team, that takes care of the visionizer, that takes care of the clients. And in return, as the team and the visionizer, we're putting back into that ecosystem to care for the ecosystem. So it's a very synergistic exchange that happens. So I always like to tell visionizers when they ask this question, just specifically this part of the question that says, how do I know what to work on first? So the number one thing is, what is it that's now? We always talk about, Jen talks about this all the time. What's now and what's next in your business? Do you have that clarity? I get that we all have these really great ideas. Visionizers have a million of them. And are you also aware though, what's now and what's next to move the needle of your business forward, to close revenue, to hire the next help that you need, to get the support that you need, to surround yourself with the right network of other like-minded CEOs like you so that you can experience exponential growth? Do you know what's next for that in practicality as well? And I think that that's a really key component. So if this person was asking me this directly, I'd say, okay, I understand there's fires, there's things that you have to deal with that come up that are so urgent and you just can't leave it, right? It would be irresponsible for you not to leave it. And I get that you have new ideas and I really want you to be able to dream big and to vision big. And we also want to keep the lights on. We want to make sure that we're getting in front of new people, that we are getting the right amount of sales coming in, and that once people are paying you, that you're fulfilling your promise and really taking care of your clients for a really great brand experience. And so you need to be able to focus on business as usual and not get so distracted with the dream of tomorrow and the issues of today that you lose that really vital part of what's going to be the most impactful thing for you to really get what you want in the long term as well. So that's my answer.
So the bottom line is, I'm sorry to communicate to all of you, but there is no one size fits all structure. There are structures that are kind of like basic structures, the foundational structures you need. But inside of it, you have to also consider, what is your work flow? What does your calendar look like? How much time do you actually have to spend on business as usual, which is your day-to-day work, and new ideas, which are new projects? And the easiest way for me to do that is my calendar. If it's not on my calendar, it's not happening. And that includes
scheduled gets done.
Yeah, and that includes personal stuff. Like people who separate their personal calendar, or they use a paper planner for stuff, and then they use their calendar. You have to consolidate them. If we're going to give you a tactical tip, do that. Because and be obedient to it. I use the word discipline and obedient. They sound so like non-feminine. I'm going to tell you, like, parts of what you want will not be feminine. I create feminine flow through structure. Structure creates freedom. That's one of my quotes, right? And so I do miss out on some things. I do. And by the way, sometimes when I miss out on them, I feel crappy, or I feel sad, or I feel FOMO. I do feel those things. But then I remember that I like my life and the way I've set it up. And just because you become, let's say, successful, or values like really start to become really values driven, doesn't mean you're going to not still be a human being that's going to have emotions and miss people. And my thing that I've always been working on, frankly, is relationships, because when I was building my business, or my businesses, a lot of relationships suffered. I guess I'll use that word, but I don't think they were suffering. It's just that people couldn't keep up with where I was going. But I had to realize that if I loved them, which I did, there's also a place where, as long as the relationship's not toxic, right? If the relationship's toxic, that's a different thing. But let's say there's people in your life that you're worried you're going to leave behind, but you really do love them and you do want to make time for them. That's a goal. It's a business goal to stay in relationship with the people you care about. It was a business goal of mine to not get divorced again. That was a business goal of mine. And when I say that, obviously only if it was a working relationship, meaning like not toxic. But yeah, I was like, I don't want to get into the place where I forget about everyone else. To me, that's success. So I just wanted to make that point, that the more you just get honest and you can have those, and we'll probably talk about this in another question, which is like, how do you have hard conversations around that? We'll talk about that in a moment, but hopefully that supported you. Does that support you? Okay, good. All right.
Okay, so the second question. No matter who I try to work with or hire, it feels like I'm really the only person who's qualified to get the work done properly, but I feel so overwhelmed. How can I do it all without drowning? This is such a loaded question. I'll let you go first, Jen.
Here's the good news. You're right. Nobody is ever going to do it as good as you. That's absolutely right. So that's it. Okay. But there's two parts to that. The first is 70% of something is better than 0% of something.
Yes, all of that.
So if we get frustrated that the 30%, which is typically the 30% is the how we would do it part, right? How we would do it is the 30% part. And we can get ourselves into the leadership mindset that it's moving the needle forward. That's important. Now, this assumes that the person is competent, okay? Okay, so just to be clear, okay, 70% of crap is crap, okay? There's no like, that's
there's no math to fix that one.
to fix that. And that's why you do need to find somebody qualified to finish the task. And there's that part that, can you clearly communicate what the end game is that you want them to accomplish, and look at their skill sets and see if that competence is there to finish that end game. Okay. The other thing I need you to hear, and Sarah's going to laugh, but it's true, is that you can have the most A-player team in the world, and they still need your ass to be on them.
Yes, that part right
Okay.
there.
And number 3, small businesses have a harder time recruiting A players than big businesses, because we can't offer them retirement, 401ks, medical, all the things that, like, especially in the beginning, right? If you're not making 7 figures, and even at 7 figures, there's still struggle there, to be honest with you. Like, so there's a lot of considerations. So what do you have to do? You have to find values-driven people. You have to become even more of a leader, because then you can magnify great people to you. Sarah opened up this conversation saying she applied for an internship with me, and I was like, you're overqualified. I don't think you want to do this kind of good at work. Good at in Hawaii is like run around work, like literally, like will be willing to do anything, including picking up my laundry kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like that's amazing, because we do need people for that stuff too, but point is she was like, no, but I know that if I work with you, I'm going to learn a lot, and I want to learn a lot. And That's what you're looking for. But not just that they're also like blowing steam up your skirt. You know what I mean? Like, oh, you just want to be here, learn something, and peace out. There's all of these like you have to trust both your intellect and your intuition. You know, they go together. Like I hate when I see this shit on the streets like just do everything by intuition. You know all the answers. No, you don't. Why are you even here today if you know all the answers? Like you don't. But your intuition told you you needed to go find the answer. And that's why you're here. Does that make sense? Like structure is required. So I mean, I just can go off on this question. So I think I'll just stop for now and then I'll let Sarah jump in and then,
So I actually have an adjacent question to this, just kind of knowing all the having read everybody's responses coming through. What happens though? So I understand like what I totally agree. The plus one of can you be clear with them about what it is that you need to do, you need to get done, and are they competent, right? Those are two pieces for sure. What about when it's something that like is not your specialty though? So let's say you hire someone who's a marketer and you're not a marketer, or you hire someone to write copy, but they struggle to find your voice, or you hire a graphic designer because you're not a designer and you know it's not quite what is needed for this ecosystem of this values driven company, but you're not the specialist. How do you, that's a really nuanced question, but I think that I hear that often. And even in the emails that I was reading through, people are struggling. It's a hard conversation because it's like, this is not it, but I'm not the specialist. What do I do here? How do I
Mhm.
have that type of conversation with the contractors that I'm hiring?
Okay, so two parts to that. Because there's so many ways to look at things. First is, I'm going to tell, okay, first is don't hire. It's like, you know how they say, like, don't go to the grocery store when you're hungry, right? Right? It's kind of the same thing. You need a social media person. So it's like, I'm going to tell people I need a social media person. So the first person that comes that looks basically going to handle the job, that's who I'm going to hire. Take a beat. Don't do that. Okay. Let at least a couple people come through and properly interview them. How many of you came from the corporate world or a traditional job where there were a lot of systems, policies, and procedures, right? Why would you do it any different in your small business? You wouldn't be at, your job. Like when I was working at Verizon, I wouldn't have just like, hey, I need a new product manager. And who the first resume that came in, I would hire them. That's not how I would do it, unless because we don't work towards it's possible they could be great. But so the other thing is like you need the basics. You need a job description. What do you need this person to do?
Mm-hmm.
And see if they're actually like when you say, here's how I would like you to apply, do they follow the instructions? Do they the base if they can't do basic shit, they're a no. I don't even care if their resume looks like The Rock, look trying to try out for the next action movie. You know what I'm saying? Like I don't care. Like if they can't follow basic instructions, they're a no. That's the first thing. Number 2, I saw Mary what you put in the chat. I think anything when it comes to marketing especially, they need to study you. And you need to give them here's the thing. It is inappropriate to ask somebody to do free labor before you hire them. So one of the things you can do is pay them a small fee as a trial and say, I'd like you for this amount to write one article for me. And I'm going to give you all these access to these, my videos, my things, and I want to see what you produce. Okay. That's a great way to test somebody quickly. Right. And then the next thing is we always give people 90 days. As long as they pass those, what I consider very appropriate hurdles, right? We give it 90 days because it takes 90 days or more even for somebody to really get your vibe. And
Yes, that part.
it's it sucks because you're impatient and I get it. But in small business, there's so much more leadership required because it's either you decide to be a leader or you decide to burn out. Your choice. The last thing I want to say is that one of the things that messes people up the most when it comes to hiring or like being disappointed in their business, if of any kind, and I talked about this on another live stream last week. Can't remember what, because I worked every day last week. It was a very busy week last week. Is that you're gonna kiss a lot of frogs before you find your prince, princess, or non-binary royalty, okay, in your business, okay? You getting a bad experience with a contractor or an employee is a cost of doing business. You have to decide that your fucking values, pardon my language, are so violated from this string of disappointments that it's enough to make you change the way you show up and what you will tolerate, which you will no longer tolerate mediocrity, that you will no longer tolerate just the first person who says, I'll work for you because you're just so happy to get help. That's a you problem. Okay. And sorry to tell you, the pool of resources aren't that great because of the competition. But here's the good news. The pandemic caused the great resignation, right? You've heard this, right? There are a lot of women, especially frankly, because like it was crazy. It's like 4 million women left the workforce in 2020 to 2021. There are a lot of qualified women who may not know your world. But if you took the time, like Sarah didn't know my world, but she had hunger, skills, and I had the patience. And there were times I was impatient, ask Sarah. Like I was like, girl, when you gonna get it? Not because she wasn't smart. She's a genius. She really is. But she can't think the way I think, because that goes back to this question of I'm the only person who's qualified to get the work done properly, right? She doesn't think like I think, and I don't think how she thinks. So we had to take the time to translate. And she had to be willing to screw up. And I'm going to say this because I'm Filipino, she's Japanese, we're Asian. So like both of us do not like to make mistakes.
No.
We have perfection syndrome, right?
So it's not in our culture.
It's not in our culture. So, point is like, I even use the word fight a lot, like meaning we fought so hard to learn each other. And when I say fight, not like verbally abusive, but just really like, today we're going to get it, and be that committed to get it. So I hope that, so again, you're going to kiss a lot of frogs until you find, and that's what it is. It's a cost of doing business. You're going to kiss a lot of frogs in your marketing campaigns. Your first marketing campaign is not going to work for most people. If you're not good at marketing, it's definitely not going to work, right? But you have to understand that's a frog. And you have to know the difference between, was this a frog or was I just being lazy or tolerating incompetence or not saying what I needed, right? Or allowing my personal issues to invade my specific goal during this season. Like just get honest so that you can know. That's the answer I give.
I agree. I have one really practical thing that all visionizers can use. And it's creating a scope for the work. Okay, so what it means is basically just, I'm going to make it as simple as possible. You need to have a one Google document where you dump out everything that you envision happening in this working relationship. If this contractor is working on a project with you or you have a new team member, everything that you envision them doing, the results that you want to really feel and see on the other side of that. And then you need to put due dates of when you're going to have those tasks be done by them and or when you're going to start to see those results. Okay, so it's really important. Now, I'm not saying that even if you're not specialized in it, okay, then it's not your specialty. It's still important that you have that as a starting baseline so that you can take it to them. Say if you're talking to a media buying team or a social strategist and you're like, I want to get to 50K followers within the next 6 months. I want to post every single day and I want my post to be viral by this date. That's called a scope, right? So you put the scope down out of your mind into this document. And then you can take it to your social media person. They might go, that's a little unrealistic because of this, and this that you don't have. To get to 50K, we're going to need to do this, and this, which is not originally what you brought me on for, but we can amend that because I see your goals now. And more realistically, probably we'll get to it in this time frame than what's here. And you guys can go back and forth and now adjust this scope so that it's very clear between the two of you, this common ground agreement that you're coming into on any project, every single project that you do. You should have that very clear and that you're on the same page with your team or your contractor, whoever it is, when you're moving this forward. What that allows you to do is, as you get into the actual weeds of the work and things happen and emotions rise and situations occur, things that we can't always foresee, the nuanced part of it, it allows you to be able to have this document to go back to say, this is what we agreed upon. And it creates shared accountability between you and the contractor to you, you to the contractor, that you can reference. And it helps as you're kissing these frogs for you to not get so overwhelmed that you're like, I'm done. I'm never going to do this again. I don't want to talk to anybody. This is all trash. Or hiring this next person that you think will save you automatically from all of the things that you've been carrying before. Because there's a lot of baggage that comes with kissing the frogs till you get to your person. And so scopes really will help with that. It'll help you make data-informed decisions that align with your values and give you a clear system and baseline by which to communicate with each other through.
Yeah, I love that. And one more thing is that scope should not change within the time frame. Once you've agreed upon what the scope is, it is the scope until it is shifted again together. Because then it's so easy. Don't ever hire somebody who you give an unrealistic goal to and they're like, sure, I can do that. You want people who will go, I love that goal. That's what you want. Let me tell you what's more realistic. And because that's what disappoints a lot of people on these internet streets. One more thing I want to say about this is, gosh, I might have lost it. It had to do with, oh gosh, what was it? Anyway, yeah, listen to Sarah. That's how you do it.
I'm sure it'll come back. Okay,
It will.
one more question.
It's going to drop in.
I know we're almost close to time, but one more question.
Okay.
Okay, so somebody said, I need to have a difficult conversation with a member of my team. I've been putting it off for a while because I'm not good at having hard conversations. That's interesting phrasing, but yes, okay. I finally scheduled a meeting. I want to know how I can best prepare for it.
Mm-hmm. How many of you get nervous with conflict or hard conversations? Right? I would think so. Like, all of us, I feel like if you don't ever feel any type of nervousness around having a hard conversation, you might be a narcissist or a sociopath. So I'm sure none of you are that, right? But I don't like hard conversations, but I'm totally willing to have them. That's the difference. I'm willing to have them. I don't like them, but I'm willing to have them. And that's the part being values driven, clean decisions, etc. So you want to know how to best prepare for it. So the first thing is you need to focus on the facts first, not the emotions. First, the facts. So you want to, like anything, like when you're having a sales conversation, you should prepare for it, right? Just like having a conversation with a contractor or an employee who, you feel didn't perform, I'm assuming in this case, you want to write down what is the specifics that didn't perform. Next part is, let's assume you didn't do what Sarah just advised you to do in the last question, which is having a scope, having due dates, right? So the thing that you want to acknowledge, so there's the facts. This broke down, this didn't work specifically. Next part is, I realize that it wasn't clear. So that's shared accountability. It's not about saying sorry. It's about taking accountability and saying, I realize that specific thing wasn't in the scope, because this is where the biggest breakdowns happen. Is you assume that they know all the things around it. And that's usually where the breakdown happens. It's typically not like somebody's completely, I mean, it does happen, by the way, but like where they just won't do their job. You know what I mean? It's more like they forgot a part that you assumed they would know. And trust me, that's the one that drives me bananas. That's the part where Sarah and I had to really like get aligned. I was like, and when it's not just honestly with her, the whole team, I'd be like, if you're in charge of marketing, you're in charge of all the KPIs for marketing. KPIs are key performance indicators. Those are the goals. That's the thing that measures. In our company, we call them KPIs, what your goals are. So if there's something below that that's going to get you to your goal and you didn't do it, that's not my issue that it's not in the scope document, because it's your job. Part of your job is to also do research, to do your own learning so you can get better at your job. So my
Mhm.
point is that in the beginning days of this relationship, when it's a hard conversation, you can realize, you know what I'm seeing is this. I realize it wasn't in a scope document, or we didn't have one. So that's one of the remedies we need to fix going forward. But what I need you to know is that going forward, based on this conversation, I need you to be doing this, and I'm going to add it to a Google Doc, or I'm going to create a Google Doc because maybe you didn't have it in the past. Okay. So now you're taking accountability. The person sees that you're also leading by example. You're not just being some type of despotic, unreasonable human, right? And then the third thing is saying, I really, I, now if it's the first time, unless it's a really horrible thing that they did, you're going to give them another chance, right? But you have to you have to tell them what that looks like. So, you know, um, so what, and you also have to tell them like what happened as a result of that breakdown, that it's not obvious to
Yes.
them.
Yes, that
Okay.
part.
So there's the facts, then the like going forward, I want it to change this way. And number three is, I need you to understand that as a result of it not happening, these other things broke. Here's where the dominoes dropped in other places. Because of that person, I'm telling you, they don't know it, right? Like again, in the early days, like when we were like our first live event that we ever did together, Sarah and I had a system for it, okay, that she helped up level and really organize. And there's so much in my head that I think, because she came from performing arts, and you go, oh, you just assign like, oh, you did productions for performing arts, so you would know this. But it is a little different than a live event for a workshop. And so that's an example of where she literally would say to me, I honestly didn't know that's what you wanted. And we had to have the conversation of, oh, okay, now I understand. But I also want you to, she's really good at going, we're going to remedy it for next time. I'm going to write it down and we're going to change it. But then also, what I needed to tell her, which was really helpful, because I didn't know to tell her this in the beginning, which is, I need you to know that it just wasn't wrong, let's say in this specific time frame, but also there were other dominoes that dropped, and she didn't know that. I didn't bother telling her. So then it would happen again in a different way. It would
Mhm.
the problem would look a little different, but to me, they were the same problem. And she's like, no, that's a different problem. Like, no, they're the same problem because the same dominoes dropped, right? And she's like, oh, well, I didn't know that, right? And so it's, I'm just gonna say it straight. It's annoying in the beginning because you're like,
Yeah.
like read
Yes.
my damn mind already,
I feel
and
like I've said this before.
right. And it's not that they're dense for the most, unless they are, but like I think for the most part, if you do the hiring part, we answered in question one, like getting the right people in, you know, taking the time to hire the right people. It's just that they're learning your rhythm and flow and the way your brain works too. And so in that hard conversation, you want facts, um, how you're going to remedy it going forward, and here were the other dominoes that fell. Those are your three things you want to cover, and that's it. I want to say, don't get into your feelings too much, but you can still be empathetic and not like a cold-hearted human, right? It's not like check mark, check mark, check mark. If you get into your feelings, make sure their feelings are tied to the facts. Okay. Your job is to be vulnerable but not fragile. There's a big difference between vulnerability and fragility. And, if you say, hey, this thing that didn't happen or it happened wrong, it actually affected my ability to focus the next week. That's a truth. And if you can say that without being a crazy banshee psycho, like, and by the way, we've worked with people like that where I'm like, when you do that, your team is so scared of you. Like, but you could say, honestly, like it threw me for a loop this week and I had to do a lot of cleanup and it was really hard. That's vulnerable. That's honest, right? But getting crazy on them is never going to work. in the long term. They might do it in the beginning because they're scared of you, but they're looking for their jobs. Other things are going to break, all kinds of things, right? So, and I'm not perfect here, by the way. I am now. I will say I think I'm perfect now. But it's meaning I just don't let things shake me anymore. But that's you being in the, like, just like anything, mastery takes practice. If you want to master not losing your cool when things break down, you have to practice it through hard conversations. So in the beginning, I'm not going to lie, I lost my cool sometimes. Like I was like, when are you guys going to effing get it? Like seriously, like there were moments when I was like, I'm just going to go back to the corporate world, you know? Because then we can just be fake to each other and it's fine. But it is a small business, you can't be fake to each other, right? You have to know each other. So that's the cool and the hard part. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, all of that. And I think too, my thoughts on in regards to this question is this part about how can I best prepare for it? You won't be able to prepare for everything. I think sometimes our minds run like they're going to say this, then I'll say that. But what if they say this? I don't want to say that. Blah blah blah. And I think instead of doing that, what I've learned, because now with a team under me, I've had to learn to also model this and have direct conversations with our team. I've learned to use the values of the company to really fortify myself and to even use it as a lens as I'm communicating. And so, for example, one of our top values is autonomy. And that's a shared value that our team understands, right? And say, okay, so the part of the dominoes was this, 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 and this, and this. And the reason why that effect is bad is because that actually is not autonomous. It's not autonomous for me. It's not autonomous for Jen in the launch. It's not autonomous for you either, because now we have to have this call. We got to work extra hours. And that's not the company culture that we're trying to set here. Just a little bit of a tweak on the top will allow us to all be able to stay in pocket. And so the values have really come through for me to be able to shape too. Instead of getting lost in my own swirl of emotions and dread and in my mind, I lean into the strength of the company, which is the values that we stand for, and really how those things are great in the good times and even in the hard times. That same positive emotion can come back to help get you prepped and in the right perspective, you know, for what you're going to go into and do. So it's really great. It's the one framework to rule them all. This is why.
It is. If you can speak through your values, you start to build, as Sarah said, that culture of, because autonomy to us is if we have to micromanage you, none of us want to do that. We want you to have freedom to do what you do best. But when you don't, now all of us are pulled into non-autonomy, right? And that falls into justice too, because justice is not just about social justice, although we are huge advocates for that and have always been. But justice also looks like it's not fair. It's not fair that we all have to kind of go over here and fix this thing, right? And when you talk to your contractors and employees, like through the value system, it really helps the conversation stay vulnerable but not fragile. And the other thing is contractors, one more piece of advice. When you hire a contractor, you want to feel like they understand that even if it's a project-based scope or they're just there part-time, that they still treat it like it's their job. Okay. I think the biggest problem I see is when entrepreneurs hire entrepreneurs, you know, and they're like, I'm an entrepreneur, so I have my own freedom and shit. No, well, you're committed to this job. So if you don't want this job, then fine. But you're an entrepreneur making your own money as an independent contractor. But on this job, you work here. And that's a hard conversation, but it's true. Like it's like it's so weird for me when people are like, oh, I hadn't, you know, I'm gonna make my own schedule. Like we hire them and all of a sudden they're like, hey, I can't work, you know, Fridays and Thursdays. All of a sudden we're like, oh, well, we didn't know that before, you know, and it was like, oh, until we sign the contract. No, if anybody does that with you, you can just release them with dignity, you know, that type of thing. So Dana, I see your hard conversation coming up in the chat, and I hope that what we mentioned to you, and here's the thing, one more thing to that, because if the prints don't come out, I don't know specifically what it is, but if you've shown them an example of what excellence looks like, that's another part of it. What does excellent look like? And sometimes with you, it's like, I don't have excellent because we haven't gotten excellent yet. Go to another brand that you feel presents excellence and say, this is the level I want it to be. not you want to be like that person or that other company. It's this is the level of output we're trying to achieve. So showing them models of what excellence looks like to you really helps them.
Mhm.
So yeah, great. Okay, so amazing. So we have to wrap up because I actually have a photo shoot that I have to get
You've
to.
had an insane week. Let's just say that.
Insane. I have to go to Napa and do a photo shoot. So um talking about what's next, I hope that this was of huge value to you. If it was, please tell us in the chat. It helps me and Sarah continue to do these, and make sure that we have the right conversations. So one of the things that we do, well, here's the thing. So here's the takeaways from today's call. First is define who you are as a values driven leader. Think about some of the concepts we talked about today and ask yourself at the minimum, what is your value stack, at least for now, right? Next is, how do you build a values driven team? And don't get overwhelmed by the word team. It could be one part-time virtual assistant means you have a team. Okay. Um, but who is the next person you actually need in your business is the question. And how will you get the confidence to direct them based on some of the questions that we answered today? And the next piece is getting that support. All right. So if you want us to support you, we would love to do that. You can have a call with us. It's a no pressure call to have a conversation around your business, and how we can support you in becoming a values driven leader. And because I always say, like, people hire us to build their brand and their marketing and stuff. And I'm like, you can't have a brand and you can't do good marketing without a team. And you need to know what to tell them what to do. And so we're shifting our entire business around the values driven piece because we believe that's the biggest gap. That's the biggest void in this industry, and we're here to fill it. So if you're interested in having a conversation, some of you are either new to us, some of you have been in our programs before. This is very different than before. So you might want to just have that conversation. So you can just book a call at confidently.me/VIP. Okay. And then you'll have a chat with one of us. All right. So with that said, thank you so much for spending an hour with us today. It's so fun. And I hope to see you on the next one and to talk to you soon. Bye, everyone.
Bye, all.